MXGP, the podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another MXGP podcast with me, Paul Malin and Jason Thomas from Fly Racing. Now, if you remember, we joined you about a month ago with some of the big signings and what we can expect kind of going into the 2026 season. And of course, we're going to touch on a few things that we've seen in the last 2 or 3 weeks with preseason international races and things like that. And obviously with the MXGP World Championship just being just a couple of weeks away now, obviously there's a lot to talk about and dissect based on what we've seen so far. But before we go any further, let's welcome in Jason Thomas, Fly Racing. Jason, good to see you again. How's Boise, first of all?
It's all good. Anytime I can actually be at home for a split second is a good time. But as you know, when you're about to enter this time of year, it's crazy right now. We're mid-season and just feels very routine. A lot of the same things, different city, different hotel, different airport, different race, but everything else about it feels exactly the same. So other than that, I'm doing really well.
And are you up to speed already? Because we've had 6 rounds of Monster Energy Supercross, SMX, and when you have that off period during the winter break and, you know, you're so used to living life on a treadmill, on that up and down roller coaster with suitcases, rucksacks, hotel rooms, gathering air miles, have you finally got back into the system now? You're back in the groove after 6 rounds? Yeah,
literally on a treadmill for me most of the time. But yes, the first week or two is a bit overwhelming. You have muscle memory. You know, you start to fall into the groove of how it all has to fit together, but go from really slow. You know, the holidays are an extreme period where there's just, you know, there's no work to be done. Everything's closed. It's an enjoyable time for everybody globally. And then the light switch flips on and it's all go all the time. You know, there's no more free time. Thankfully for me, I enjoy it. You know, if we were doing something that I didn't enjoy, this would be a very difficult part of the year. But yeah, I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. But yes, it is an acclimation period. There is like a holy cow, this is for real. And my personal life just goes bye-bye and it's full racing full time.
Well, obviously, we've got all that to come in the next couple of weeks because with the first round, the brand new season of the FIM Motocross World Championship, MXGP of Argentina, just 2 weeks away in Bariloche, Western Australia. We're there just for a weekend, you know, all the way to South America, long haul, right on the west coast, alongside the border of Chile. So that's how far over we are, and we're southwest of Buenos Aires, the capital. And as we speak, actually, the bikes, the crates, and all the material that needs to be shipped over there is pretty much either being shipped today or very, very imminently in readiness for that first round of the championship. So the treadmill life is gonna get back to full speed for us pretty quickly as well. So yeah, but you know what? You wouldn't have it any other way, would you?
I wouldn't. And for us, you know, we're so separated from that and isolated from the preparation in Europe and all the things that have to go on to, you know, execute this flyaway in Argentina. But for us, that really the sign every single year is like, oh, the international races are happening. So to us, that's the signal that things are warming up because these riders we know they're off riding somewhere dark and wet all winter long. But then when these races start popping up and we get to watch them on YouTube or Red Bull TV, wherever that may be, that's our signal like, oh, MXGP is coming. And of course, I'm a little bit closer to it. But the average fan here that's, you know, fully consumed with SMX, that's the signal.
We talk about riding somewhere dark and wet. That was 2025, wasn't it? Every round. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it's going to be a lot drier and a lot more sort of weather favourable for us. We will talk about MXGP. We'll talk about the opening championship round. Of course, we will. We'll talk about the pre-season race as well. But before we do, as we have you here, and obviously your side gig away from Fly Racing is working within Monster Energy Supercross, SMX, and all the rest of it. How's it been for you in terms of the championship? Obviously, the last time we spoke, Eli Tomac got off to a flying start. Since then, he's won 3 races. Chase Sexton, Cooper Webb, Kenny Roczen have all won 1. Jorge Prado was showing good consistency and getting up to speed very, very quickly back on the KTM. Obviously, had a bit of a setback at the weekend. Hopefully, he's back this weekend in Texas. But Hunter Lawrence, very consistent. He's the last 2 rounds in red, the championship leader, and we've had 2 red plate holders already from the first 6 rounds so far. What have you made of it all in the last 6 weeks?
Yeah, a lot of parity. You know, I still believe that Eli Tomac is the guy to beat, even though he doesn't hold the red plate right now. It's really been through circumstances that he's lost that lead. You know, you want to give Hunter Lawrence a lot of credit. You know, 4 second places in a row is pretty impressive, especially when you look at he's still relatively new to Monster Energy Supercross, abbreviated 2024 and abbreviated 2025. So he's still figuring this thing out, and I think that's very apropos. He is figuring this thing out. So it's very deep. I think there's a lot of comparables between MXGP and SMX right now when you look at the depth of the field. I really felt like MXGP was missing a little bit of that the last year or two, just injuries and some riders departing. It's like, man, there was all this depth, and now you look at the field and it's not the same. Well, 2026, welcome back. It is going to be deeper than ever. And we have the same thing stateside where when that gate drops, you simply have no idea who's going to win. And if you're a fan, you can't ask for more than that. That's what everybody wants, is suspense on whether it's Sunday afternoon or Saturday evening. To not know what's going to happen when you tune in is about as good as it gets.
Have you had a favorite round so far or not?
I truly like the Triple Crowns. If you're there every single weekend, there's kind of a lot of waiting. The heat races, as a racer, Paul, you and I know the qualification, you're just making sure that nothing erratic happens. You want to qualify reasonably well. You don't want to do anything to discourage your chances of success. But guys aren't taking a lot of risk there. The main events are really where the points are paid, the money's paid. That's where everything happens. So there's this big lead up throughout the night to get there. Triple Crowns, boom. As soon as we go racing, everything matters at that point. You get 6 attempts and 6 go rounds here of real racing where guys are really taking chances. So for me, that's the best platform we have. So yeah, the Triple Crown for me would be number 1 so far.
Yeah, you mentioned the exciting series coming up with MXGP as well, and everything that you're sort of going through over there. But the reason I mentioned what's happening over in the USA at the moment, and obviously what is shaping up to be a very exciting season in the US, just as it will be here in MXGP and MX2, which kicks off on the 7th and 8th of March in Argentina, as we said. More on that in a minute. Obviously, we've already seen some preseason races. We were in Alghero in Sardinia for the first of 2 rounds of the Italian International Championship. The week after that was in Mantova. We were on the same weekend of Mantova. Some of those riders that were in Sardinia headed to the south of France to do some hard pack racing over there in Pernod-les-Fontaines. The Hawkstone Park International, where a lot of those riders were going to come together for the first time, didn't materialise. That was cancelled, surprise, surprise, due to the weather. But we still have Sommières in France and L'Europe, which is 1 week before the GP in Argentina. There's still those to come. But more on those races in a moment. But first, a quick word from our sponsor this week, FMF. And obviously, for more than 50 years, FMF, or the Flying Machine Factory, as they're better known, has been an integral part of motocross racing history on both sides of the Atlantic. And when it was created in 1973, it was a year of revolutionary first, wasn't it? With bands like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, the Rolling Stones, setting the world ablaze the world over. Some even tasted, certainly on your coasts in the US, their first light beer, maybe even rode their first jet ski. But Don Emler, Big D, he lit the torch, sparking one of the most influential brands in motorcycle history. And in his mind, he is always racing. Now, like most pioneering inventors, Big D built his performance exhaust with a sense of purpose. From day one, always striving for perfection, FMF is always innovating. And obviously, more than 50 years later, the song remains the same. FMF still engineers and builds everything by hand from the ground up in the USA. And as long as you dream of flying higher and going faster, FMF will continue to innovate and build things the right way, the American way. JT, a lot of racers have and continue to use FMF exhaust systems, from series like Hard Enduro to Hare and Hound, GNCC, but of course MXGP, the MXGP FI Motocross World Championship, MA Motocross and Supercross, with teams such as Nastan Husqvarna, where we've got Liam Everts and Kyle Wolf, who won a title a couple of years ago, and riders such as Hayden Deegan, Cooper Webb at Yamaha, and obviously they won 250 and 450 Supercross titles last year with FMF. They really have been part of the American fabric, or the fabric of American motocross, haven't they? And they're still going strong, and that's great to see, because, we do see brands fall by the wayside, but FMF is a massive staple in our sport.
It is, and it's the prototypical American racing company, and from the inclusion of Danny Laporte so long ago, so they've truly had that racing fabric, legend of the sport, being so involved for decades now. If you drive around Southern California, and that's expanded, but I truly remember it most in Southern California, you'd see FMF stickers everywhere. They're in a size where they'll fit exactly over like a Ford sticker on a truck or a car. You just see that, and that, to me, that says so much, because I would guarantee you there are people, putting that sticker on things, they don't even know what it is, right? And that's when you've truly made it into the American fabric, is when people are placing stickers on things and they don't even know what the brand is. That resonates cool, and it resonates something they want to be a part of. It doesn't get much better than that for FMF. So yeah, it's been a long road, but a great one for them.
Yeah, and great to see, like I say, still going strong. But let's move our attentions then to the preseason races, as yes, they're not MXGP World Championship rounds, but for the riders in MXGP and MX2, of course, they form a massive sort of stepping stone to getting ready for the championship season. Alghero in Sardinia. You've been to Riola?
I have, yeah,
Sardinia, or not?
A few times, yeah.
Yeah, so you know how deep the sand is there. Alghero is even deeper.
Okay.
Great location, right on the side of the... Yeah, but you overlook the ocean, the Mediterranean. So great location. Unfortunately, the weather didn't play ball. We're in this weird weather pattern all over Europe at the moment. Heavy conditions. But it was the first appearance of Lucas Coenen in 2026. It was second in MXGP last year. And, of course, Tim Gajser, his debut on the Monster Energy Yamaha. Lucas Coenen went 1-1. Tim Gajser was second overall with a 6th and a 2nd. Oriol Oliver was the surprise podium finisher there, 3rd overall with the 3rd and the 4th for Sean Simpson's Gabriel SS24 KTM racing team. I know when we spoke in the last sort of week or so, you'd seen the highlights. I'm not sure if you went back and revisited, but what you have seen of those races in Alghero, what did you make of it? And certainly the performance from Lucas Coenen, first of all.
Well, you could see the progression. He took such a step in his first year. We really didn't know what to expect, honestly. That first year, he comes in with broken arms. Everybody's just like, how is he racing? And then you see him take this giant leap forward. And a lot of the inconsistency left. There were still some, those rounds in Sweden and in China resonated large at the end of the year. But it wasn't the crash every weekend, crash or win type phenomenon that he had been before. He really became a championship fixture near the front, and I think you're going to get another step in 2026. I truly think we're seeing kind of a legend develop right in front of our eyes. The question is, for me, is it going to be a championship step? And this year is going to be deep, right? We come in with everyone healthy, which we know, unfortunately, that doesn't always stay the same. We'll likely run into injuries again. But I think this kid's future is so damn bright. I probably should have sunglasses on just talking about him right now. You watch him ride that weekend, and you see it. You see the magic with that kid when he's riding. Now, I will say, Tim Gajser took a step. That first weekend, deep sand is not his best. It's not his forte, right? He's fine. He's good at it. He's world champion, obviously, but it's not his strong suit. Where I would say Lucas, maybe it is. He can ride everything. We know how much time he spent in, south of France and everywhere riding. But I would say that suits Lucas a little bit more than maybe Tim does. So I didn't want to jump to conclusions based off of that. It was also Tim's race. But specifically speaking on Lucas, what a way to send a signal to everybody else that he's ready for the year.
Well, he definitely came out firing on all cylinders. And I think he came out just firing or wanting to fire warning shots straight away, didn't he? Hey, what I saw last year, believe the hype. This is me. It looks like he's worked on his intensity, because the pass that he put on Adamo and Tim within the space of about 100 meters or so through the right and down into the sort of final left, which was on the inside of the first turn. He wasn't hanging around. It wasn't pretty, but he got the job done, but also didn't need to take those kind of risks at that kind of race. It's only a preseason international race. But to him, it seems like any race is a race, whether it's a preseason race going 1-1 or a World Championship Grand Prix going 1-1, doesn't really matter. And I think he's fired an early warning shot to his rivals with the way he rode there. I think. Would you agree with that kind of intensity?
For sure. I would still like to see him be a little bit more patient. And he's young, right? And young, youthful exuberance and lack of patience and lack of wisdom, all those things are crafts that he will learn over time. So maybe it's unfair to ask those things of him so early. I would even say, look at a guy like Ricky Carmichael. He didn't have any of that early days either. He learned those things. So maybe it's an unfair ask, but the rest of it, the speed, the intensity, the willingness to take the fight to Tim, all those are there. For me, in a nutshell, with Lucas Coenen, the only thing that is stopping him is Lucas Coenen. Truly. I think if he can stay out of his own way and learn to accept a second or a third when a second or a third is all there is to get on a particular weekend, he's going to be very, very difficult to deal with, because if you look at especially on the MX2 days, and his brother, that has been the challenge, is being willing to accept less than a win on a particular day and knowing like there's only a podium in the cards today. Maybe there's only a fifth in the cards today, but that's okay. Guess what Romain Febvre did in 2025? His worst day was a fifth, and now he's a world champion.
Yeah. Obviously, we mentioned Tim Gajser a moment ago, 6 and a second. Prior to that, I think we discussed on our first podcast, almost like a season preview kind of thing. He looked very comfortable first time out that we saw, the videos of him on the bike. But how much of Sardinia was, you mentioned deep sand, not his forte, but it's not like he can't ride in the sand. But also how much was first race? And I don't care how much credentials you have, sort of backing you up, 5 world titles, 125 podiums and all the rest of it. But you're still going to get nervous before the first race of the season, and that's going to come in Argentina. But lining up for the first time with a new brand, even in a preseason race, there is a certain amount of expectation from you as the rider, from Tim, maybe the team, but at the same time, there's also that other side, but it's only an international. But even still, in the same way that we saw with Lucas Coenen, you still want to hold yourself accountable. I'm not saying that he didn't, but it looked like he was just a little bit tight and maybe a little bit nervous. And the reason why I say that is because a week later in Mantova, which we'll come on to, he looked very, very comfortable and cruised to a 1-1 victory. So would you say the same? Alguero was just a little bit of nervous tension for him?
Yeah, and I think it's an acclimation period too. It's learning the bike. It's learning communication with the team. Once you put the motorcycle into race conditions, things just happen differently, right? The intensity goes up, the bike responds differently. So now you have to make settings changes throughout the day that maybe you just haven't encountered throughout testing. That's just how it goes because you're pushing harder and the track's simply different. So you have to work through like, okay, I'm feeling this. Your technician needs to hear that, be communicated, and then make the appropriate change. And that takes time. All those things take time on a new motorcycle, on a new team with new staff, and all those things have to come together. So I think there is a learning period that goes on, and that's why these international races are so important. And exactly what you said, I was a little bit concerned leaving the race in Sardinia there. He just didn't seem to have what Lucas had. But then watching him in Mantova a week later, I was like, oh, there it is. There's the starts. There's the patience. There's the pace when he needs it. He looks firmly in command of this race entirely. That's the Tim Gajser that I have come to expect. And there it is already. Race 2, he's already there. So that was very reassuring for me.
Yeah. And obviously, I guess the surprise podium, an MX2 rider coming up, which we have several of those over the course of the year, with Andrea Adamo, Kai de Wolf. Oriol Oliver getting on the podium, 3rd overall. Good consistent rides for him, 3rd and 4th. I know the depth wasn't there in terms of the rest of the MXGP field, but still a very credible and very sort of notable performance from the Spaniard. Who
I was impressed.
Like he's going to sort of enjoy being on a bigger bike.
Absolutely. And I it's not that I can follow his career through every track that he's ever raced, but when you say Spaniard, I don't immediately think he's going to be fantastic in the deep sand of Sardinia, right? So for him to take a step up into that class and be consistently near the podium, right? It wasn't like it was a fluke and he went 5-6 for 3rd. Yeah. He was there throughout most of the day. This kid's been thrown into the deep end. You remember when he was thrown into Motocross of Nations when he really probably wasn't prepared for it, and the results kind of showed that. So you can see him progressing through. And to me, this was a huge surprise result to the upside. So maybe it bodes well for him this year. And whatever, I assume he's still going to race. Is he moving full time to MXGP in 26?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a big step for any. Like typically, you see riders find crazy success in MX2, and they still have a difficult time making the jump to MXGP because you run into guys like, hey, Calvin Verlander and Jeremy Sewer, these veterans that have a decade of experience. You're not, forget about Jeffrey Herlings and Tim Gajser and forget about them. You have this depth of guys, Alberto Ferrado, guys that you don't immediately think about that are incredibly talented. Those are your real problems. So for him to immediately be in the mix already, it bodes pretty well.
Yeah. What about an MX2? Obviously, just like barely older twin brother, Lucas. Sacha Coenen went 1-1 as well in MX2. And it's not like he wasn't up against anybody significant, because defending champion Simon Längenfelder was there. He went 3-2 for second overall. And Ferruccio Zanchi third on the Ducati 250 Desmo. Great debut start for them with a second and a sixth. Sacha Coenen, again, just like Lucas, looked like he was in a man in a hurry. Couldn't wait to get out of the gate and back to the truck for his warm down. He was emphatic, wasn't he? And Simon Längenfelder, as the defending champion, I'm not going to read anything into it more than anything other than he was just there just to try and sort of limber up and just get, some wheels turning and things like that. You know what I mean? Not taking anything away from Sacha. Like I say, it's only a preseason race, but that's how it seemed to me. Simon was just happy just to bang out some laps, and that's a mature sign from the defending champion, isn't it?
Yeah, I almost see it the same way as the MXGP class. Some subtle differences where, the deep sand is not Längenfelder's, it's not his forte. He's made huge improvements. Spent a lot of time in Germany riding sand. You could see his improvement there, but it's not necessarily his calling card, and it's been a liability in championships past. So I didn't expect him to come out and just run away with a race like that. Yeah. But for Sacha is his own worst enemy, right? He's his own best friend, and he's the reason he does so well, but you just watch him, and it's almost you're waiting for a crash. And I hate to say that about him. He wears fly racing, and I cheer for him every time he's out there. But this kid he has so much spark to him, but there's so much risk too. And if he could ever find a happy medium between the two where maybe 1% less, and that's repeatable each and every weekend without this, spectacular crash like we saw in France last year. Some of these things are scary to watch. So that's what I'm really looking for with Sacha, is not taking a step in skill or speed or intensity. He has those in spades. It's can he learn the race management side, of which Simon has done incredibly well. Simon, that was a master class last year of managing a championship. And every time that Kai would take a step, he would counter and have his own strong weekend. Those are the types of things I want to see from Sacha. And I don't know if he can or can't, if he's ready yet or not. But, he still has a few years left in MX2 to figure it out. But I wouldn't be shocked if you start to see signs of him maturing in his racing, and it's not win or crash every time. There's got to be a conversation of like, it's okay. And I know I'm repeating the same thing from Lucas, and maybe it's just because they're twins, but there has to be a conversation where it's okay to be third or fourth on a day, because we're thinking about what's going to happen in Australia in September, not necessarily, in Italy in April or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, exactly. Ferruccio Zanchi obviously got a podium in a muddy Kozar last year. I know you were there. But
muddy.
That was a bright start for Ducati, wasn't it? For Ferruccio Zanchi, third overall, a second and a sixth. Probably could have had a couple of top threes, but I think he had a problem at the start in the second race. So, but to get a second, first time out for them, the whole of the team were there. That's an encouraging start for the 250 program for Ducati.
It is. And I think Paolo Ciabatti has to be happy with the progress around the world. You look at Dylan Ferrandis' success in America, steady top 10s each and every week on a brand new chassis for Supercross. This 250 program is brand new for MX2, and they have a great international race already. So, they have the talent, which is a huge step forward, right? They have talented riders on their machinery. But for them to go head-to-head with established race teams and immediately be impactful, I think it says a lot about the effort and just the smarts behind the scenes, like the technological advances and how many, think about all the pitfalls these other race teams have had to go through to immediately be up to speed, right? And you give credit to the Kawasaki team, right? They were very good with Mathis Valin in the first year, but that bike's established. Just because the team side was new, the bike's been around forever and they had past data to draw from. This Ducati program has none of that. They don't. They don't know what they don't know yet about this motorcycle and race condition. So I was wildly impressed, and I'm super excited to see how this story develops.
Yeah, Mantova a week later. Obviously, Lucas and Sacha, they went and rode in the south of France, where they or certainly where Lucas paired up with Romain Febvre, the defending MXGP world champion. But in the MXGP category, MX1 is in Italy. Obviously, Tim Gajser was there, and it was the first appearance from Jeffrey Herlings and Tom Vial and their new surroundings at Honda. More about their new sponsors in a moment. Conditions, again, heavy but more favourable, I would say. But Gajser this time dominating, going 1-1. He was fastest in time practice as well. And that fast lap in time practice, him and Herlings were about 30 seconds apart on that fast lap. And Tim got it by, sort of 3 or 4 tenths, 5 tenths or something like that. Vial was second overall with a second and a fifth. Ferrato on the Fantic, you mentioned him a moment ago. Obviously spent a lot of the year injured last year, but fifth and a fourth for him. Jeffrey Herlings wasn't so fortunate. He had a stone jam the chain in the first race, which left him in 11th. But he obviously came back for third behind Ruben Fernandez, in second, his teammate, of course, and Tim Gajser. What did you make of Mantova? Obviously, Gajser, you mentioned him a little bit ago. It looked like it took him, just second race and back to the Gajser that you know and expect to see in 2026. But he certainly looked a lot more comfortable and relaxed another week down the line, and no doubt a few more days riding the bike with the team.
Yeah, I was very impressed with Gajser, and I mentioned before, I just felt like this was Renaissance Tim Gajser. You know, you can tell when riders are calm and they're very comfortable with the dynamic and the situation. You could see that there was no urgency for him in the race whatsoever, really. You never really saw him have to push out of his comfort zone, you know, whether it was Fernandez or whoever, even in race 1 when Talviku is out front. Like, you just didn't see anything where he was uncomfortable with how things are going, or he was unsure. No. Could I push more? Do I have the pace to do what I need to do? So that was all reassuring. Good starts, good pace, good fitness. I loved what I saw. This was the picture perfect international round as a warm-up. Like, if you were wanting to have kind of a warm blanket on the Yamaha program after a race, that was it. Like, that was a big step for everyone involved over there. I would kind of say the opposite for Jeffrey Herlings. It wasn't terrible. Like, it wasn't awful, but the starts really weren't there, right? You could just see coming off the line.
The first race was, but he ran wide at turn 2 in the first race, and then came back from. But he was right there with Tim and everybody that he needed to be, but just didn't really. I think what he said in his post-race interviews in various places, probably seen them, just didn't have the race intensity. It's his first race. He's not going to have. So again, it just goes to show, doesn't it? The amount of time you ride doing laps, putting in the laps, doing your testing and your motos during the week, there is no substitute for getting behind the gate, getting the gate drops, having the nerves. The 15-second board goes up. You know, MXGP, that'll be the fly racing 15-second board. But
Thank you.
And then, of course, and I think we saw that just lack of intensity. But how do you think he looked, Jeffrey? Because obviously when the first videos dropped of him in Spain, the first 2 days of January, he looked very awkward, I think that was just more the shock of seeing him on a new brand after 17 years in Orange. But then we get to see him race. But yeah, lack of intensity from my side there. Second race was a little bit better, third. But we would expect, just as we said about Tim, you'd expect that to improve and get better. It's going to be the same with Jeffrey, isn't it?
I think he will get better, yes. And on the starts, I more meant if you watch him on the release from the gate, it's just there's some erratic movement. He doesn't seem like, you just want it as smooth as possible, one repeatable, consistent movement exiting the gate. You just see him moving around a lot. He just looked like his first race starts on the motorcycle. It's really what it looked like. And I think it will get better. But if you look over the last few years, starts have been inconsistent for him. They've been a liability for him. And what he's been able to lean on is incredible pace, incredible intensity, and especially late in the races where he can pour it on, where everybody else is a little bit more vulnerable, he can take advantage of that. So that's what I wanted to see. Okay, if you don't get the start, you get run off the race course in the second corner. Sure, but guys like Vial, guys like Fernandez, some of these guys that I don't think are going to be championship contenders, they'll be individual race contenders. I want to see him have intensity and confidence to go get them late, go past them late, and assert himself over them and say, yeah, cool, I know you guys are factory riders and even on my same team, but I'm simply better than you, and I have more late in conditions like this, sand, wet, a race that I've won world championships and Motocross of Nations events on. I'm going to take advantage of you late. That's what I wanted to see. I didn't really get it. It's one race. It's early. Still have time. But I think everybody left there wanting a little bit more, which I think is fair.
Probably Jeffrey included.
Yep.
And actually, when you mentioned about his starts haven't been his sort of forte, certainly not in MXGP anyway. it's important for him to put in a good lap in time practice. Tim obviously pipped him because, on that final lap, and actually Tim went into the first gate, inside gate, for that left-hand turn. If that would have been Jeffrey getting the first gate pick, he would have gone there. That's his go-to. That's his MO, where he says, right, I'm getting first gate pick. I'm always going to go that option, which gets me the shortest way around the turn when everybody goes wide. And him and Tim are actually banging bars going down the start straight in that first race. Tim didn't back off. Jeff didn't back off. Tim held that inside line. Jeff tried to come back at him in the second turn and switched it to the outside, and then obviously ran off track. It's something as simple as that, isn't it? You know, those 2 or 3 tenths in the opposite direction in time practice would have made the difference in Jeffrey's starting position, and it's going to be the same in MXGP. He would have had the ability to hustle Gajser to the outside going into the first turn, command that inside, and lead by turn 2. Obviously, we still don't know how his race intensity would have been, leading. Would he, with clear track, just been able to sort of go for it? Would arm pump, things like that. And these are things that riders are using these international races for as well, like arm pump, like Tim had in Alghero. Lucas Coenen didn't suffer with it. Sacha Coenen didn't suffer with it. I don't think Simon Längenfelder did. And whether Jeffrey did or not in Mantova or not, I don't know. But he was keeping a very low profile between races, as you can imagine. But yeah, I think generally first race doesn't really mean anything, again, not taking anything away from those who performed and had good success there and stuff like that. But, Jeffrey's got time. We expected to see them in Hawkstone Park last weekend, but that was cancelled.
Yeah, how much does that matter, do you think, not being able to get another race? And I guess if it would have been mud, which it sounds like it would have been, maybe it doesn't accomplish much at all.
Yeah, I mean, they cancelled early as well, Thursday. Thursday they cancelled because they're expecting even more weather. And I saw the images of the track where they said it was looking good on their website or on their social post, but it did look like there's still a bit of water on there, in terms of some of the parts of the track and whatever. So when I saw the weather, I thought, that's going to be a bit iffy. You know what I mean? So great that they had the foresight just to say, look, let's save everybody the hassle and waddling around. It's only going to get worse. And that's not really racing either, So in some cases, yes, you want a gate drop, but you want to be able to go racing rather than just sort of enduro racing.
Yeah, sure.
But for someone like Jeffrey, who needs that race intensity, that's massive. For someone like Kay de Wolf, who was looking to line up for the first race this year, massive, just to get some intensity of their own. Before we talk about Hawkstone and whatever happened in places like Pernes-la-Fontaine with Lucas and Romain, Tom Vial was okay, consistent. Again, just getting that, what was he, 2nd and 5th for 2nd overall in Mantova. The first race he looked good, but did drop off of Tim, and then obviously didn't make the best start, pretty much stayed in 5th. But another rider who maybe was just lacking that intensity on his new bike, outdoors, first outdoor race, of course, for him with a new brand. I
thought he was good. Tom is a guy that I believe needs to start. And especially when you look at the depth of MXGP in 26, he's a rider that's always been what I would consider like a term front runner, right? He likes to start up front. He's very good at riding defensively. It's where he finds comfort, is being at the front early. So that's going to be critically important for him. And you saw that where if he gets to the front, he's fine. He can adapt to other people's pace, and it's just where he wants to be. He's very similar to a rider like Justin Cooper in America, where they've spent their entire career getting good starts. And if something happens and Tom Vial starts 15th regularly in MXGP in 26, it's going to be a very long season. He's not a guy that just charges from the back, and especially with the depth, he's going to be in a dogfight the entire race. So I was actually very pleased with what I saw from Vial. I thought the pace didn't seem like it was too much for him, and he looked the part. He looked like he adapted really well to MXGP. So, it's early. It's one race. Not the entire field was there, but if I was looking for let's check some boxes and see that we're on the right track, I think he did that.
Well, when you mention hole shots, Tom Vial, when he was here for MX2, so the 3 or 4 years he did MX2, he got 61 hole shots. So he's one of the lead contenders for hole shots going into MXGP. Even though he's on a new bike, new class, you don't really forget how to start, do you? So, from that side, I think
especially
that'll be interesting. Go on.
I think those conditions too are not necessarily like perfect for Tom Vial, right? He's had so much more success in hard pack and MX2 anyway versus the sand. So, I mean, that's a pretty good sign, that soft, wet Mantova to be like that close already. I thought it was a positive sign.
Yeah. Simon Längenfelder, obviously without Sacha Coenen there, went 1-1, dominated. Valerio Latta put up a good fight on the Honda in race 2, led for much of the race, but it just looked like Längenfelder just got to a point in the race and went, okay, let's just flick the switch and let's see what we can do. And he did it with relative ease, with the experience that he's got and the knowledge, and obviously working hard in the off-season. He's changed some things on the bike as well, which he said have worked in their favour. And of course, Kaz Volk on a TM. It was decent, but while he might have finished third overall, still a few riders missing, and some of those riders were racing in France that day. But again, for the Italian brand TM, for Kaz Volk on a new brand, they're the kind of boosts that you need, aren't you, just to sort of give yourself that little bit of confidence moving forward.
Yeah, it's always good when you're on an Italian brand to do well in Italy. We know that whether it's MotoGP or MXGP or Formula One, right? It does matter. I think the same thing for Ferrado. To put a solid result in there on the Fantic, it does matter. But I want to hear about this Kubelins kid. Is that how you pronounce it, Kubelins?
Yeah.
That was impressive. That, for me, as an American, I don't follow it near like 1% as closely as you do. I was like, who is that? And how is he doing that? That was crazy impressive in race 1. Yeah,
well, he raced 125 European Championship last year. So he's a lad from Latvia. He's he's pretty big build. I think he won a race in the Junior World Championship last year in a muddy France, not a million miles away from Ernée. But he did finish 6th in the championship, got just the one podium last year in Belgium, and that was 3rd overall. So to see him on a 252-stroke, not a 4-stroke, was pretty impressive, and 2 good starts, and obviously loved the Latvian summer conditions that they were racing in. But no, he was impressive, and right to sort of pick him out. But he's going to be riding MX 250, European 250 Championship, and presumably on a 252-stroke because you can in that category. Yeah, that was, again, I had no preparation for him coming in, and when he jumped off the screen, I was like, who is that? Right? I'm scrambling through the internet machine to find out who this was. But kudos. I just wanted to give him a shout out because I'm watching the first half of the race and I'm like, he might win this thing. And then, as you mentioned, Längenfelder was like, nah, and it's time to go now. And you just saw him turn it on. But I think part of that is the field too. Like when Längenfelder goes there, he looks at the entry list and he's like, okay, if I don't win today, we have a real problem, like a severe problem. I think it was just a biding my time, and now I'll put in some pace and win the race. But that should not disregard any, the efforts of kids like Kubelins, who that's a big stage for them. That's a big opportunity for them to make a name for themselves. We're sitting here talking about it on this show for a reason. Actually, it goes to show, doesn't it, how competitive a 252-stroke motorcycle can be in amongst the MX2 250s.
Especially when you have a lot of traction, that's the big one. If you don't have to worry about the rear breaking loose and you can really be aggressive, that 2-stroke, I would say it's almost an advantage at times because it's really light, really nimble, and traction's in a premium.
On the same weekend as Mantova, we were focusing as well, sort of on the result sheet at Pernes-le-Fontaine, former Grand Prix track in the south of France. Romain Febvre lining up for the first time. Lucas Coenen, who just won a week before in Sardinia. Just off the coast of Italy. Those two were having a great battle in race 1, back and forth for the lead until Lucas fell. Obviously, the talk of him needing to minimise those mistakes, the intensity we saw 1 week earlier. Romain Febvre, on the other hand, showed how calm he is and was in 2025 under pressure. And we also saw the first outing for Maxime Renaux. He won the event overall. It was over 3 races. And I think... I don't know if something happened to Roman in one of the races, but even still, to win on the same weekend that Tim won in Italy, he's showing once again, the former MX2 world champ, that he's going to be a threat if he stays healthy and stays upright.
Well, I think you got, if you went in with preconceived notions about each rider, you got what you were expecting. You saw Roman be consistent, and he's going to do the same thing, especially in a race in France. He's not going to do anything silly. He's going to be at the front. Lucas, as we talked about, if all things are equal, he's going to probably win if he doesn't crash. And this time he crashed. So I think he needs to really calm down a bit. And I say that carefully because he has taken steps, right? In Sardinia, there were moments. We saw moments in Sardinia. But in 2025, he was calm for the most part. I got to spend some time with him practicing and watching him. And there were no erratic movements. There was no urgency. He truly has changed his riding style a bit from the 250. And then for Renaux, like he won the opener last year, right? If Renault's healthy and everything's good, he can be in the fight. He has just not been able to sustain health and performance for any length of time since the MX2 championship. Simply has not been able to do it. So if you tell me that he's healthy all year, I'm going to tell you that he's going to be in the fight to win races. Like it is that simple, but he has to figure out step A before step B can be possible.
Actually, when you talk to people in and around the paddock and stuff like that, and they mention Maxime Renaux, and obviously, yes, he has the speed, he has the fitness, he has the heart, the desire. He's a world champion in MX2 a few years ago. He's been unlucky with a few injuries in his MXGP campaign the last 2 or 3 years, but obviously that's part of racing, sadly. But as you said, he kicked off 2025 with the overall victory in Argentina last year. His temperament, when you talk to people in the paddock, he's either on or off. He's either full gas or sort of below the radar. Only knows one way, only one switch. You know what I mean? It's on full gas and that's it. And therefore is a kind of insight into his personality as well. It's just a million miles an hour, just got to have it done. You know what I mean? And he's kind of got that fiery French temperament as well. Now, at Le Touquet, I did the live commentary for the Enduropile. It's like a 3-hour beach race. If you've not seen it, it was on Red Bull TV. But it was, I had a guest come in, Alexander Kowalski, who is Yamaha Motor Europe's off-road racing manager, talking about obviously their new signing, Tim Gajser, how he's gelling and settling in and things like that. And obviously, how is the kind of atmosphere between him and Maxime Renaux? Because you've got a 5-time world champ joining a world champ from MX2. Both believe, and they're very headstrong, both believe that they should be number one on the team, no doubt. And I said, how is it going to be kind of managing that situation? He said, for sure, it's not going to come without its problems. Absolutely. But at the moment, everything is all well and good. But I just think in terms of their two temperaments, Tim is a little bit more sort of laid back, placid, or that's the side he allows us to see. Whereas we also see Maxime Renaux, his emotions get the better of him sometimes, when things aren't well. So that's where the fire comes from. It's going to be very interesting, isn't it, under that Monster Energy Yamaha. And I guess we'll be watching it closely as the season unfolds, if one's doing better than the other one, or if they're kind of battling for the championship straight away, and just the body language between them and how Yamaha kind of contain that.
Yeah, it's not an easy one. I would compare it to when Cooper Webb joined Monster Star Yamaha in America for the 2023 season, and he was now joining UI Tomac, right? Both multi-time champions, both of them looking at each championship as theirs, right? And for the most part, they both handled it well. They're mature. Maybe it's because they're both older that they could stay separate, keep their emotions in check. But I think that's really what it comes down to. Both sides have to be mature about things and understand the goal. And what they're paid to do is put Yamaha on top. That in the end, that is what they are paid to do. And they're, of course, trying to win. And there's going to be a lot of personal emotions involved. But in the end, it is to promote Yamaha and put Yamaha on top. And I think as long as they keep their heads about it and understand racing with each other is a few % difference than it is racing with Lucas or Romain or any other motorcycle on the racetrack. You just have to approach it with a little bit more caution. And that's a real thing. You just can't go reckless abandon with your teammate the way you can with other guys. I think if they do that and understand it's a long season, nothing's going to be decided early, I think that they'll be okay.
Yeah. MX2 at Pernod-le-Fontaine, the French International. Sacha Coenen took a win and a crash. Didn't line up for the final race.
Stop you if you've heard that before.
I'll let you say that. As they're one of your guys. Yeah. Hawkstone Park obviously got cancelled. We didn't get to see Kai, Jeffrey, Romain, Maxime Renaux, and a few others obviously in that battle. We just mentioned it a few moments ago that for someone like Kai, DeWolf, Jeffrey Herlings needing gate drops, needing that race intensity, Romain Febvre, Maxime Renaux, they'd already had a race at least. What can we take away from the races that we've seen so far? We've still got 2 weekends before Argentina, one of those at Sommières in France, and then another one in Lierop the week before Argentina, which I know Jeffrey and DeWolf, for instance, are going to be racing at. What can we take away from these races? Let's try and break it down a little bit in the next sort of 10 minutes or so. Romain Febvre seems he's more relaxed from my side since winning that second championship. I was talking to Antti Pirinen yesterday on the phone for an MXGP magazine feature. And, me looking watching him sort of after celebrating the championship, the way that he was with his wife, just not caring the world, dancing in front of everybody, after the awards and things like that. And, the comments that we've seen after him winning the championship, where it was nice to win one, but to win two now establishes him as a real world champion, And I think the weight of those 10 years, having chased that second title, is finally off the shoulders. He's going to be relaxed. We've said it before in the previous podcast, I think. He's going to be dangerous in that respect, because a relaxed rider is going to be a happy rider, a fast rider. And I think he showed that already in the first showing of the season for him. Yes, only an international, but picking up from where he left off in terms of his speed, his comfort, his consistency.
Well, that second championship does matter. I think it takes so much pressure off of him, like career-wise. And when you get to, I think, Roman's age, Eli Tomac, I think, is in the same boat. Cooper Webb is approaching that same thing. You're thinking about legacy, and you're thinking about, how am I going to be remembered? You start thinking about your career as a collective, instead of where Lucas is like, every day is a new day, and he's just attack, attack, attack. You have this bigger picture, and you have a lot more perspective about things, and you're able to reflect over years of performance and, where did I kind of leave stuff on the table? Where could I have been better? But also, where did I persevere? Where did I make the most of a situation maybe that wasn't the perfect dynamic? I just think that winning that second championship last year removes so much doubt or regret or anything that he may have ever felt before, where he just felt like, man, I really could have done more. Forget all that now. I think the same thing could be said for Cooper Webb's third Monster Energy Supercross championship, if you want to draw parallels. It just said, you know what? None of it was a fluke. I am a legitimate champion. I deserve all of the accolades because I was able to do it early, go through all of this, adversity and fighting through years of racing. And then guess what? On the back end of my career, I did it again. I did it again against the newest upstarts, and I was able to withstand them. And I put it in a crazy year with wins and consistency. So I just think it changes the narrative completely. The riders are always battling self-doubt. You're always your worst critic as a racer, and you're always wondering, is it good enough? Did I do it right? I just think it goes a long way in answering that question. And when you see those moments where you're mentioning, like, he's dancing and he seems carefree, and I've seen it with Cooper Webb, where he lets his guard down and he's emotional and he's soft, when typically he's as hard as a rock all the time. Like, his psyche is so intense, and there just seems no way to penetrate that. Those moments it takes a lot to get through that. And those championships where it's like, nobody can ever take this legacy from you now, I think it goes a long way for their long-term happiness. And that's what I like the most, is that I think one day they're going to look back and look back with satisfaction, where before, if maybe they didn't get that championship, they'd always be like, man, I left something out there. I should have done it better. I should have done more. I think it just removes all of that. And that, for me, that makes me happy that they're going to, I think, be much more secure in their racing than they would have been otherwise.
What about Lucas Coenen? Obviously, he still looks like he's fired up. Would you say he's more fired up and with even more of a point to prove? Or is it business as usual, just as he was? Have you seen a change in him and his attitude, having seen him earlier this year?
I think he's just more sure of himself. The way he attacked those guys in Sardinia. I think it was also, he was trying to send a message, which, right or wrong, I don't necessarily have an opinion. But I think he was trying to send a message to Tim straight away that, like, hey, when you left, we were battling it out in Switzerland, and guess what? I'm even better now than I was then. I do think that was a real thing. But I just would like to see him be more cognizant of certain situations in 26. And time will tell if he does or doesn't. But I think that will be the step, is that is the unlock. Because the rest of it he already has, the speed, intensity, and all those things, the starts. He has every tool in the toolbox. But whatever it is, 19 or 20 race championship, I'll have to check my email. Whatever that is, it spans an incredibly long period of time, right? Like you can't just be a flash in the pan early and then burn out by midsummer. You're not even going to finish inside the top 10 of the championship if you do that. So you have to be in it for the long run. And once he understands that and is like, every weekend, I've got to be the same guy. I can't be a 10th place guy in Sweden. Can't do it. You cannot do that. So to me, that will be the next step in his development.
And especially with, if everybody on that MXGP grid is healthy, last year when Tim went out, Jeffrey was kind of working his way back in and things like that. And you had a situation where it really was just Tim Just Romain and Lucas. You add Jeffrey, you add Tim back into the mix, and you bring Kai back in, and maybe Adamo. We'll talk about him in a minute. All of a sudden, there's every reason to be a little bit more race savvy, because when there's only two of you and you're that much more ahead of the field, you make a mistake, you're probably still going to finish second if your main rival is going to win the race. But you get 5, 6, 7, 8 guys, and you make that mistake from first or second, all of a sudden you're back down there chasing again. And guess what happens when you chase again? You make more mistakes, more pressure builds up, and you lose more points. So, the racecraft, the savviness has got to be sort of on point. No doubt about that. What about Tim Gajser? Obviously, of the big signings, definitely showed that he was the more comfortable of the two. And when we talk about that, we talk about him and Jeffrey. But that's not to say Jeffrey won't, improve in his situation. But Tim Gajser looking very relaxed. And for sure, what we've seen so far is definitely going to come out as a threat. Finished third in the opening Grand Prix last year in Argentina and was unfussed by it. He let the two French guys, Maxime and Romain, just get on with it. And he built after that to the point where after 5 or 6 rounds, he was leading the championship. And then obviously he got hurt. But he was almost 50 points clear at that point.
Yeah, for me, he is the championship favorite. I'll be real. I'm rooting for Lucas Coenen because he wears fly race. I'll just put that on the front end, to be honest with you. But the logical side of my brain and what do I expect to happen is I think Tim Gajser is the championship favorite. He was the clear leader in 2025. From what I saw in Mantova, he has taken a gigantic step forward in a very short amount of time. And starts on point, fitness on point, pace on point. We know like racecraft and psyche, all those things are there because look how successful he's been for so long. I have no reservations about Tim Gajser. Really, the only thing I see getting in the way is injury, and that hasn't really been a thing. Like last year was kind of a fluke. He hits that side marker there, which was a random freak thing. I just like the way he looks right now. And I would even go a step further and say that I think he has an opportunity to maybe be better on the Yamaha, because I think the Yamaha is a little bit more stable than the Honda, and I think it's going to smooth him out a little bit, right? Like the Honda to me is like a Ferrari. It's so fast, but it has to be in a really narrow window to be its best self. And I think if you get out of that, things can get a little sketchy, right? Like it gets a little twitchy, it gets a little nervous on certain situations. I think the Yamaha is a little bit more of a stable platform, and I think that's going to help Tim when things are a little bit dicey. Maybe just soothe the situation a little bit. So that's just a guess. It's what I'm looking for in 26. But if you're looking for a championship pick for me, it's going to be Tim Gajser.
One of the things that you have mentioned consistently on these first two podcasts is that Yamaha do need to sort of put themselves back in the ring and prove, their success of the past needs to be, again, now in 2026 onwards. They've taken a step forward by signing Tim, but obviously got another world champion there as well with Maxime Renaux from MX2 from a few years ago. We mentioned briefly, how the dynamic is going to be quite interesting. What about Maxime Renaux? He's obviously going to be another rider with a point to prove, but I suppose in many ways, like Lucas Coenen, he's got to be able to sort of contain his emotions a little bit more and not try to win the championship in the first round. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, for Renaux, it is. It's really the top end performance is not in question. Like I have no doubts about whether he can go the pace or be in the fight. It's none of that. It's sustainability. It's being there every single weekend. And it's like the same questions I have for Lucas Coenen times 10. It really is. It's can you be there for the long term versus winning the opener and then things start to go sideways immediately. Like that has been the question for Maxime for a while now. Like this is not a new dynamic. It's been the same question. And at some point, what my concern is with Maxime is that at some point, he's on a factory team. He's teammates with multi-time world champion. At some point, Yamaha has to go, is this going to work? Is this going to work? And I don't think they're there yet where they're like ready to move on. But if you continue to get hurt and you continue to struggle, that becomes a question for anybody. I don't care what the name is. Those questions arise.
Actually, how much can someone like Maxime Renaux learn from Tim Gajser? Because obviously, whilst Maxime won the championship and he was teammates with Jargo Kietz, he then went into MXGP and he was the main guy and was consistently the main guy. He's had different teammates with Jeremy C, with Calvin Milano, with Bonacorsi, with Glenn Koldenoff, with Jargo. But now you've got a guy who's got 5 titles and has been consistently at the top of his game, even in the time that Maxime Renaux has been in MXGP. So obviously the smart money would say, learn what you can, you know, when you're in that same team environment and everything else like that. But is another world champion too stubborn to sort of even look across the thing and see how the other guy's doing it? Well, you know, because he can learn a lot, and they can probably both learn a bit from each other. Maybe,
but I would think that Tim Gajser would probably I'm not showing him anything, right? I'm gonna go back and ride my track, you know, in Croatia or whatever, right on the border there. I'm not going to show this kid anything because these guys all know that the other guys are capable, right? And they're the last thing you want to do is give them that last % of unlock that makes them a real threat and a real competitor that they have to worry about for the better part of 6 months. They don't want that. So I would bet that Tim's not going to show him a damn thing. But if I was Maxime, I would be trying to mimic Romain more than anybody. Just consistency, be there week in and week out, kind of this blasé attitude, right? Laissez-faire, however you want to say it. He just don't get too high, don't get too low, don't get worked up, because as you mentioned, he does get fiery, right? He wants to respond and wants to act. You never see that from Romain, right? He's just like, let things come and happen and let them unfold. And guess what? I'm going to be there. I was there last week. I'm going to be there next week. And in a few months, it's only going to be a few of us left, and I'm still going to be there. That is, I think, what Maxime needs a little bit more of than anything, because the rest of it, the pace, the starts, like the intensity, the confidence, all those things are there, which one could argue those are the most difficult things to get, and he has those. It's the patience and the maturity in his racing and all those things that I think is what's been lacking.
I suppose the same thing could be said about Honda, obviously with Jeffrey Herlings and Tom Vial. Tom new to the team, Jeffrey new to the team, 2-time champ with Tom Vial, 5-time champ with Jeffrey Herlings. Patience is going to be the key. How much patience is Jeffrey Herlings going to have at the beginning of the year to get everything dialed? And again, there's going to be in a situation, these two know each other from their time at KTM. They were probably in the same morning and things like that. So they've probably got more of a tendency to work together and develop together, I would say. It's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out.
Yeah, I think Jeffrey will be as patient as the situation allows. I think it's going to be very situational for him. Like saying situational, the same word twice. But I'll give you an example. Let's say Tim comes out and Tim wins 6 motos in a row, or Lucas comes out and wins 4 out of 6. It's going to up the urgency, and Jeffrey's going to go, okay, we can't wait, because I'm going to be down 40 points here before we get everything kind of going, before I get up to speed here. So I think if there's a lot of parity and a lot of mix-up and random winners, and Tim's going 6-1 and Lucas is 14-3, and he won't be worried at all, right? He will let things unfold. He'll understand a long championship, and he'll be like, this is exactly how I want things to go, because once we get back to Europe, the sand tracks typically don't come in until later in the championship. He'll be very content to let things unfold. But if anybody gets hot, the way that Tim was just on fire, and when he got hurt, he was 50 points up, he's going to have to press the issue. He's going to have to. You just simply can't let former world champions build up a full race lead worth of points. You can't let that happen. So I just think he will take it as it goes until he simply can't anymore, and then we'll see. When you have to start forcing things, as we know, is when bad things can happen. But going in, I don't think there will be a true sense of urgency, because he's done this for too long. He knows how long this championship is. You get too worked up about things that happen early. Like Lucas Coenen had broken arms at the first round, right? And look how that all turned out. He took it down to the last moto. So that's what I would tell him anyway.
Andrea Adamo was another rider that featured in the 2 Italian rounds, up from MX2 into MXGP. A lot of people had their reservations. Why not stay MX2 and kind of maximize everything? And maybe even win a second championship, but he's obviously decided to go up. Not sure if he was if he jumped or if he was pushed or whatever, but either way, he's there. He looked good actually in those first couple of rounds, and it was just the technical issues that kind of derailed him a little bit. But I thought he rode pretty good, rode smart, looked comfortable, and I think the 450 will suit him. But it just depends on the intensity that we get from him. Another fiery. This one in Italian though.
Yeah, the challenge is that it's the depth of the field. And I've mentioned that a few times, but I see, you look at guys like Kai de Wolf and Adamo and these guys moving up. He couldn't beat them really consistently in MX2, so I don't really see a reason he's going to beat them in MXGP. This field is, I would argue, it's maybe the deepest MXGP field ever, right? And I don't have the
8 world
range.
Champions.
Yeah, I don't have the range of knowledge with you do, but like just from the outside, watching, I'm like, this is the return of the MXGP depth to this class, right? It felt like it was going the wrong way. Felt like we were losing champions, whether they were coming stateside or retiring or injury or whatever. It felt like we were going the wrong direction. And then here we are. You look at the field, and if I'm any of the guys that, you want to be in the top 10, maybe you're on like a second tier team with factory support. You have to be just like, this is going to be tough. Like, this is going to be a very challenging thing. And we know, unfortunately, injuries will play a role. It just always does. But on the front end, for a kid like that moving up, it's a big ask. It's a big ask into a really, really challenging field with a lot of maturity in it.
Yeah. Obviously, there are other riders that haven't raced preseason races yet that we won't touch on now. But by the time we do our next one, which will be after Argentina, then, of course, we'll have a lot more intel and info and everything else. But in terms of Honda, they just had their sort of live press conference recently. New title sponsor on board. So the team now is going to be known as Honda HRC Petronas. Monster are also on board as a sponsor on the side panels there. How important is that? How crucial is that? How big a deal is that? That Honda HRC, who traditionally are a team where the bike is just red, hardly any branding, and obviously we've seen the branding now, it's kind of pulled a full 180. You can't mistake the big white logo up the side, the Petronas, the Monster, the everything else. And obviously that Monster link is prevalent because that links up with the Honda Dakar team. That's a big, bold move for HRC, isn't it?
It's
and
bold.
How much of that is the Jeffrey Herlings effect?
It's a great question. I hadn't thought about Jeffrey there. First things first, adding Petronas is a huge move, right? Whether it's Formula One, whether it's MotoGP, like that is a big move, especially when you look at Honda's history. They typically haven't gone down that path. Honda wants to be front and center with everything that they do. I understand in MotoGP, Repsol has been a big part of it but for motocross side, really hasn't been kind of that way. So that's an awesome thing to bring in companies with the size and the influence that Petronas has is great. I think it's kind of recognizing how relevant and important MXGP is. So that's really cool. I don't love the look. I'll be honest with you, just aesthetically, it's not my favorite. I'm not a graphic designer, right? But one man's opinion, not my favorite. But if you're looking at what's the greater good here, maybe Petronas said, "Hey, this is how it's got to be." I don't know, right? All the inner workings of a decision like that. It's not my favorite, but I will say that the change where Jeffrey gets all these headlines, Petronas comes on board. It's probably a pretty cool time to be a part of Honda HRC right now. Other than maybe if you have to stare at the graphics all day.
And obviously, we will talk about Nastan Husqvarna, of course, because obviously you've got MX2 with Liam Everts, MXGP with Kai de Wolf. He's obviously moving up. But all we'll talk about on this podcast, as far as they're concerned, they also have a little bit more money coming in the form of Red Bull. Now, they're not a title sponsor, but they are on the side of the motorcycles. Either way, whether it's Honda, whether it's Nastan Husqvarna, any new big investment is huge for the sport, huge for those teams, for the exposure that they're going to get. So I guess in many ways it shows that, MXGP is moving in the right direction and trying to get a little bit more mainstream. Obviously, that's the plan going forward, isn't it? Always has been.
Yeah. And you look at teams like that, like they've been so reliant on whether it's having a wealthy owner or just having a really passionate person that wants to fund everything. That has been such a key dynamic for the sport for so long. So to have other companies that they're now trying to get in the promotional game, they're not, they're trying to spend money to get a return because this sport and these teams are so identifiable and something they want to be associated with. That's a big step, right? And it's a very unique thing for MXGP to have these individual team ownerships. And they're probably loving the fact that other companies are stepping in and saying, "Hey, we want to be a part of that. We're going to take some of the burden off of the responsibility that you carry." So I think of a team like Nastan, especially, that's a big step for them. And then they deserve it. They deserve, look at the success they've had over the last few years. And I can't imagine that Kai de Wolf is going to do anything but impress in 26. And I know we'll kind of cover him later. We haven't even got to see him really yet on the 450, but I can't blame anybody for wanting to be a part of that team. From Rasmus to Kai to everything that they do is grade A.
Yeah, well, look, I think that pretty much sums up for now. We'll do it again after the GP in Argentina, maybe a couple of weeks after or something like that, mid-March. But JT, it's been a pleasure. Before we go, you're getting ready to go to Texas this weekend?
Yeah. Yep.
Looking forward to it. What's it going to hold for us?
It's going to hold about 60,000 people inside AT&T Stadium. No, it's going to be great. We are embarking on our East Coast swing now. So first 250 East Division race, we go east, which means longer flights for me every week. Not as great, but different dirt, different dynamics. Daytona is only a week away, so it does mark a shift in our series. And some of the riders, that can be a positive or negative. Everybody tries to spin it as a positive. Can't be positive for everybody. But yeah, we're in the swing of things. We're heading east, new crop of 250 guys. So I'm excited to maybe get into some warmer weather as we dive to Daytona and Birmingham and some of these southern cities. But yeah, it's a great time for racing. MotoGP's around the corner. MXGP's around the corner. SMX is in the swing of it. WMX globally is about to kick off.
JT's in his element.
Yeah, we've been doing a ton of stuff with WMX. They're about to kick off their series in Australia. So it's if you're a fan of racing, it's already there, but it's about to get a lot better.
You're going to be like Elvis Presley with like 8 screens watching 8 different sports shows at one time, from all the sports that you've just mentioned. JT, Fly Racing, it's been a pleasure as always. Enjoy this weekend and enjoy that East Coast shift and a little bit of warmer weather. And we'll talk to you again after Argentina.
Thanks, Matt.
No worries. Well, that's it from me and from Jason. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
MXGP, the podcast.